Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today. We'll start the program today with the recitation of Quran. Let's start with Salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سأل سائل بعذاب واقع للكافرين ليس له دافع من الله ذي المعارج. تعرج الملائكة والروح إليه في يوم كان مقداره 50,000 سنة فاصبر صبرا جميلا إنهم يرونه بعيدا ونراه قريبا. يوم تكون السماء كالمهل وتكون الجبال كالعهن ولا يسأل حميم حميما. يبصرونهم يود المجرم لو يفتدي من عذاب يومئذ ببنيه وصاحبته وأخيه وفصيلته التي تؤويه ومن في الأرض جميعا ثم ينجيه. كلا إنها لظى نزاعة للشوى تدعو من أدبر وتولى وجمع فأوعى. إن الإنسان خلق هلوعا إذا مسه الشر جزوعا وإذا مسه الخير منوعا إلا المصلين الذين هم على صلاتهم دائمون. والذين في أموالهم حق معلوم للسائل والمحروم والذين يصدقون بيوم الدين والذين هم من عذاب ربهم مشفقون إن عذاب ربهم غير مأمون. والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين. فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون. والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم بشهاداتهم قائمون والذين هم على صلاتهم يحافظون. أولئك في جنات مكرمون. فما للذين كفروا قبلك مهطعين عن اليمين وعن الشمال عزين. أيطمع كل امرئ منهم أن يدخل جنة نعيم كلا إنا خلقناهم مما يعلمون. فلا أقسم برب المشارق والمغارب إنا لقادرون على أن نبدل خيرا منهم وما نحن بمسبوقين. فذرهم يخوضوا ويلعبوا حتى يلاقوا يومهم الذي يوعدون. يوم يخرجون من الأجداث سراعا كأنهم إلى نصب يوفضون. خاشعة أبصارهم ترهقهم ذلة ذلك اليوم الذي كانوا يوعدون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه أن أنذر قومك من قبل أن يأتيهم عذاب أليم. قال يا قوم إني لكم نذير مبين أن اعبدوا الله واتقوه وأطيعون يغفر لكم من ذنوبكم ويؤخركم إلى أجل مسمى إن أجل الله إذا جاء لا يؤخر لو كنتم تعلمون. قال رب إني دعوت قومي ليلا ونهارا فلم يزدهم دعائي إلا فرارا. وإني كلما دعوتهم لتغفر لهم جعلوا أصابعهم في آذانهم واستغشوا ثيابهم وأصروا واستكبروا استكبارا. ثم إني دعوتهم جهارا ثم إني أعلنت لهم وأسررت لهم إسرارا. فقلت استغفروا ربكم إنه كان غفارا. يرسل السماء عليكم مدرارا ويمددكم بأموال وبنين ويجعل لكم جنات ويجعل لكم أنهارا. ما لكم لا ترجون لله وقارا وقد خلقكم أطوارا. ألم تروا كيف خلق الله 7 سماوات طباقا وجعل القمر فيهن نورا وجعل الشمس سراجا والله أنبتكم لكم من الأرض نباتا ثم يعيدكم فيها ويخرجكم إخراجا والله جعل لكم الأرض بساطا لتسلكوا منها سبلا فجاجا قال نوح رب إنهم عصوني واتبعوا من لم يزده ماله وولده إلا خسارا ومكروا مكرا كبارا وقالوا لا تذرن آلهتكم ولا تذرن ودا ولا سواعا ولا يغوث ويعوق ونسرا وقد أضلوا كثيرا ولا تزد الظالمين إلا ضلالا مما خطيئاتهم أغرقوا فأدخلوا نارا فلم يجدوا لهم من دون الله أنصارا وقال نوح رب لا تذر على الأرض من الكافرين ديارا إنك إن تذرهم يضلوا عبادك ولا يلدوا إلا فاجرا كفارا رب اغفر لي ولوالدي ولمن دخل بيتي مؤمنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات ولا تزد الظالمين إلا تبارا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you very much for that beautiful recitation. We are today very fortunate to have Dr. Farhad Ghoddousi, who will be speaking to us on the topic of what if Imam Hussain alayhi salam did not rise up. Dr. Ghoddousi is a specialist in physics and a member of the research staff at Wayne State University. He has taken many courses during his undergraduate and graduate studies. He, aside from his study in physics, he has extensive studies in Islamic Studies during his college years. He has taken many courses in topics including philosophy of science, Islamic philosophy, Western philosophy, Quranic studies, history of Islam and Christianity, amongst others, in addition to self-taught learning. He's been an active member of the Shia community in the Metro Detroit area since 1998, including giving lectures for different occasions. Recently, during this Muharram, he gave two talks as part of the Northwestern University Shia Muslim Association Muharram program. So let's welcome him. Salat ala Muhammad wa al Muhammad.
So, Assalamu alaikum. I'm very happy to joining the Shia Islam Shari community of Middle Sex. So, let me put it. Bismillah. The topic of the talk is what Imam Hussain alayhi salam, what would happen if he did not uprise. So, I will start. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل إنما أعزكم بواحدة أن تقوموا لله مثنى وفرادا. Say, I give you just a single advice that you rise up for God's sake in pairs or singly. God Almighty, among all the advices, have chosen this one for us in Quran, that rise for the sake of God individually, in singly, in pair, in groups. And rise doesn't mean necessarily anything you do for the sake of God. Helping, giving hand to God is raising, so just saying a good word or spreading good words or helping. So that's, I think, a verse which aptly describes the Imam Hussein's uprising. What I will start is a hadith which frames kind of my talk. Is the hadith which has been both in Shia Sunni books. In the Sunni books, you have it in Tirmizi and Sunan ibn Majah, Jami of Tirmizi, Sunan ibn Majah, but I reported from Kamal al-Ziyarat, which is Shia book. The text is very similar, that it says Prophet Muhammad was invited as a guest somewhere, and Imam Hussain alayhi salam was with him, was playing in the street, and then was very young, 3-4 years old, and then Prophet called him, and then he escaped away, and Prophet ran after him a couple of times, and he was laughing Imam Hussain like the 3-year-old child do. And then Prophet hugged him and kissed him and said, Husaynu minni ana min Husainin, ahabballahu man ahabba Husayna. And the messenger of God said, Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. God likes the one who likes Hussein. The first part of the first phrase is kind of seems clear that Hussein is from me, maybe refers to genealogical or biological relationship. Prophet Muhammad was the grandfather of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. But the second part it seems not that clear at first how Prophet Muhammad is from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Commentators all these years have understood that Imam Hussein's somehow, this must be a spiritual or connection, in the sense Imam Hussein's presence or activity saved the mission or protect the name or mission or of the Prophet to the Prophet Muhammad. And that's kind of my intention or my claim is, if Imam Hussein alayhi salam wasn't there, if he hasn't uprised, either the Islam will be there only by name, or even without name. I know the thing is exaggeration, but I think it's true. And at least the content will be very different, and it would be possible even name of Prophet Muhammad be erased of history. I know these all seems a little bit bold claims, but I really think we can show some of them to a good degree. So in this sense, the name of the Prophet Muhammad, in the sense of mission, has saved by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This question, which is the main question, which I'm going to give some answer, is also asked with some different ways from Shia Muslims too. Sometimes recently I say, okay, what was the difference between, it was about Yazid or his time that caused Imam Hussein uprise? Was he, and while, for example, for the rulers before or after other Imams, especially after other Imams didn't uprise, Some say, okay, they were cruel too, they were tyrant too, they were debaucherous too, drinking other stuff. So what was the difference about Yazid? Partially it is about the character of Yazid, but more than that is about the situation and the condition the 20-year rule of Muawiyah had produced, and overall the condition of the Islamic community at that time. One of the other things I maybe have to mention here, I'll put it in frame. Look, even Sunni community, they're much more indebted to Imam Hussein uprising that they are ever, besides the Shias or everybody, and much of the Sunni scholarship, Sunni tradition, even the Hadith collections, I think happened. If Imam Hussein did not uprise, would not happen. So I put this in the background, but you will see my kind of argument will be a little bit different. You will see that. And one thing maybe I should have mentioned it first. Look, the style I'm giving is a little more lecture. Even in my talks usually are more like university lectures, but this one is a little bit more. So I have slides. I'm going that way. I think sometimes it's good to have passions and emotions or nice speech, but I think sometimes we need more discipline, and you see maybe more after this, and you see what type of argument I use. Look, one part that is Yazid was different. I just mentioned, I know you all know that Yazid was the only one openly hostile to Islam and Prophet Muhammad. This was one unique thing. Besides, was all those negative characters, drinking, debauchery, all those stuff was in him. So he was careless, even he doesn't care when his father was dying, stuff like that. So, but he was openly hostile, and so that's one thing you have in mind. And I will show you an example, but I want to say it's something bigger here, and then you see the talk says. The example, which is a very interesting example, is that when the caravan of the ladies from after Ashura brought from Karbala to Damascus, and then the head of Imam Hussein is placed in front of Yazid. So you can see Yazid start to recite some poems. As you can see, the paragraph says Yazid was sitting, and before him was sitting on the throne, and before surrounded by courtiers and soldiers, and the decapitated head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was placed in a basin in front of him, grasping a cane. He struck Imam Hussein's mouth, so he's very disrespectful, and said mockingly, "You have such a beautiful teeth." So this part, okay, very disrespectful. Then he recited 6 verses. These verses is interesting. Look, 2 of it are not from him. 2 of it are from famous poet of the time of Jahiliyyah, which the time of Uhud war, which that guy recited lampooning Muslims against Muslims, and everybody know whose verses are what is it. Yazid recite those 2 verses, which are completely hostile to Islam, Muslim, and Prophet Muhammad, and then he add to it. So you see what kind of person now is on the throne. He says, I wish my venerable forefathers at the Battle of Badr had witnessed. This Yazid says, and then recites the panic of Khazraj in the face of our spears. That's the two verses from that Jahiliyyah poet. They would have declaimed, praise God, and shine forth in joy, and said, Yazid, may your hands never wither. I avenged my elders at Badr. The ledger is balanced. I would not be the son of my great forebearers if I had not killed Ahmad's son. So you see, the whole Ashura is, for him, is a continuation of Battle of Badr. He takes the revenge of the Badr, and he thanking himself on behalf of his ancestors. So this person now is the throne of Islam, is the Caliph, is ruling Islamic lands. And then, so yes, this is different. I mean, one thing I could have said it at the end, but I'm saying to now, if maybe I've, look, this is after the uprising of Imam Hussein, he is the last one in the whole Islamic land that was openly hostile to Islam. After that, after what happened after Ashura, what the cost was, no ruler, even Saddam Hussein or something that scale, was ever there to be openly hostile to Islam and Prophet Muhammad. After that, this was the last one, Yazid. So that's we will see that, but I would say so to kind of balance the story. So that's one thing. If that hasn't happened, this will be our caliph. This will be our ruler, imam, who people follow. But let's see what is the situation was, because I think more than this anecdote, I'm thinking what Muawiyah have done and what was intended to do, or when even Umayyads did after that. You know, the uprising of Imam Hussein slowed them, have that in mind, but they still try to continue with their plan, as we'll see. But at the end, it was Imam Hussein the victorious. Remember, that's maybe hardly said. The Abbasid revolution, which toppled Umayyad, was a continuation of lots of revolutions and uprisings. And Abbasid revolution, in essence, was a Shia revolution. We have many revolutions, maybe the revolution changes, but the slogan of that revolution was Reza min Ali Muhammad. One, we agree on the rulership one from Prophet Muhammad's family. So at the end, it was successful. But for now, let's go, at the end, maybe it takes 60, 70 years to Ashura gives its fruits, and at least toppling Umayyad, but we'll see that. Okay, what we have here, we have a vastly big empire, which is, even you can see the parts which are dashed are the conquest in the time of Umayyads, mostly Muawiyah. So the empire is much expanded. It is really an Arab empire, not an Islamic empire. Arab supremacy is really understood. I'm not anything against Arabs, but that's the truth. They don't care about encouraging the whole Umayyad period. They didn't encourage conversion to Islam. Not only they didn't encourage, they sometimes block or impede or discourage. You will have the largest group, not as neither Arabs nor Muslim non-Arabs, but Muslim non-Muslim are the largest group. Christians maybe as one group are the biggest, but the percentage of Muslims are very low. Sometimes people think, oh, everybody have become Muslim, so how if Imam Hussein had an uprising, Islam would be lost? No. The percentage of Muslims are very low. As I said, it was not any encouragement to convert to Islam. You have in North Africa Berbers, in Iran you have Persians. Persians are mostly Zoroastrian. Berbers are there, and then in some of them even want to be convert to Islam because of financial tax stuff. Umayyads discourage them. Look, to give you an idea, look, this is the conversion curves of to Islam in Iran. I mean, similar curves exist. The same person worked at that. Look, we are talking at the time of Ashura, 60 Hijrah. It's somewhere between 670 to 680 AD. So you see, even it's not 5% of Iranians have converted. This is cumulative curve. It's less than 10% clearly, especially in the heartland of Persia. The conversion actually happened much later. You will see it's picked up around, start to pick up around Abbasid revolution. Actually, they encouraged people to convert. That's a part of that Abu Muslim mission in Khurasan. And then really the maximum rate is in time of Imam Reza's movement, around 200, Ma'mun's Caliphate and Imam Reza's movement to Mashhad. So you see, most majority didn't know anything about Islam. They were living their life. So have these in background. And then the policy of Muawiyah, some people, and that's I'm going to expand. Some people say, okay, what's the difference of Muawiyah? I mean, why Imam Hussein did peace with him? Why Imam Hussein, for example, uprised after Muawiyah? You know, the 20 years of Muawiyah rule changed many things. Imam Hussein had no other option to peace with him because it's kind of Muawiyah have won much of the public relation front, and most of the Kufas do not want, or Shia Muslims in Iraq, they don't want to fight. So he could fight, but he would be martyred. Imam Hussein would be martyred every minute we finished in 40 years, one of Hijrah. So that peace was reasonable and it's just a move, like there is no other option. And then Imam Hussein was to abide by the peace because there was agreement his brother had done with Muawiyah, but Muawiyah started, as we see, to kind of play around. He had the control, he had the money, he had the prestige, he was a caliphate, and to change everything. And that's what you see. He was really changing the Sunnah of Prophet. His goal was to somehow erase the name of the Prophet, and it was tweaking it. And that's kind of I want to show more detail. But even I want to have at least because what I will discuss is different lines. So some allusion to what of the sayings of Imam Hussein, and then Imam Hussein kind of himself explain what the situation is. This is a very short letter which Imam Hussein wrote to the part of a short letter Imam Hussein wrote to people of Basra, the nobles of Basra, and he invited them to join him. And part of the letter, Imam Hussein says, okay, we Ahlul Bayt were more deserved to be the rulers of community and succeeding prophet, but okay, the community or nation precede us in this matter, and they do not listen to us. And then he said, we cherish peace, although we consider ourselves more worthy, deserving of caliphate than them. We don't. So okay, we say you don't want it. Okay, we don't have anything to say. We don't uprise. But then it says, look, this is the previously in the time of the first two caliphs, maybe the third caliph. The Imam said, okay, you don't want us to be caliph. We set aside. But at the times of those two, there was no systematic intention to distort the Sunnah of Prophet and his religion and his name. But now, at the end of the 20 years, and then also by the coming of the Yazid, which was totally personally undeserved, that's Imam says, look, he says, I send you my messenger to you guys, and I invite you to the book of Allah and the tradition Sunnah of the Prophet. For I see that the traditions Sunnah have been destroyed and innovations have crept up. That's the change. You know, he noticed if this goes on for a little more, and then with such a person like Yazid, nothing will be left after a few years. So there is nothing to just sit down. There is nothing left. And then one thing also I add, maybe I don't want to, I'm not just mentioning. Look, Yazid was raised all the time in Syria. He was never in Medina or Hijaz, no connection. Muawiyah is also for 40 years, from after 15 Hijrah, when Futuhat started, he always was in Syria. It was over there. Yazid's mother was from tribe Bani Kalb, which is a majorly Christian tribe. His uncles lobbied Muawiyah to choose Yazid as successor among his sons, because Muawiyah was, it seems, thinking initially another son. And the other thing is that this Bani Kalb was the backbone of Muawiyah's army. And they were there in Syria before Islam. They were very powerful, but because they were there before Islam, they did not participate in the Futuhat. There wasn't even inside Hijaz knowing about Prophet of Islam. They were there. And then one of the reasons also Muawiyah raised to power much strongly, get influential in Syria, and also this Bani Kalb gets power. They were very cohesive. You know, they fight very cohesively. They fought in wars with Imam Ali alayhi salam too. It was that because of the plague in Syria at the early Futuhat, about 5-6 of the Muslim army with the one big Futuhat of Syria, conquest of Syria, died. And then so the whole balance of influence and power changed. If that original army stayed in Syria the same way they stayed in Kufa, which was garrison city, maybe the dynamic of Syria wouldn't be different. It wouldn't be so isolated and so Muawiyah be dominant, because at least people know Muawiyah didn't have precedence. So I have these all in mind. And then the last thing to know, what my main part of the talk starts, is this. After the events of Karbala, which is important to what I was saying, we have 3 centers of power immediately after Karbala. I mean, after maybe a few years of One is Umayyads in Syria, which after Yazid's a couple of years dying, changes the Sufyani branch, gives its place to Marwani branch. Then Kufa is Iraq center of Shia opposition. The penitent Sababin rebel and Mukhtar rebels, and also Zubair, Abdullah ibn Zubair, one of the son of one of our companions, rise in Mecca, and then the control of Hijaz, and then much of this aristocracy of Quraysh and Saqif, and also Ansar in Medina, Khazraj, and also support him. Essentially, you will see the Ahl Sunnah which we have come on with some connection with the Zubayrids. The more, at least the one which is, not how much I have to say, but you can say that Zubair is somehow proto Ahl Sunnah is there, and the proto Shia is from Kufa, if you want to go like that. Okay, this is my main part of the talk, and it is related the concept of caliphate. And with that, I want to explain some of the important, the main topic, if Imam Hussein have an uprising, what will happen. Now, this book is written by Patricia Crone. If some of you know him, Martin, she was in England at that time. She did study in Oxford. Patricia Crone is the one which the people know him as. She was the originator of this historical revisionism, bringing doubt to much of the Islamic history. And then people like Tom Holland, I think you must have heard him in England, his name, and his kind of anti-bias, anti-Islamic documentary. And then the other one counterpart he has, Don Gibson in United States, which say, I don't know, Makkah Kaaba was in Petra, or Tom Holland says Prophet Muhammad maybe not existed, was like later. All, if they have some credential, academic credential, put it on Patricia Crone's work. She was skeptical in everything, but things have changed. But this book was written early, and I want to show even in the scholars which you feel they're not really in agreement with you, you can find stuff which is beneficial for your argument. That's what ulama she always have done. Historically, read all the Amma books. And interestingly, in this book, she doesn't mention Imam Hussein or his uprising much, maybe one or two times, but it's some concept which is very relevant. So even for me, it was surprising. Her concept discussion about the caliphate. So just if you search her name is associated with much of revision of history of Islam and so on. Now, one of the important tasks is this, and that's now the traditional Sunni view, which was developed later in the period of Ma'mun or late after that. This is called classical Islam. That the position of caliphate, which caliphs do not have only religious authority, they have only political authority. That's now, if you ask them what is caliphate is. The answer is this: caliph is just an administrator of the Sharia law, and then ulama and the scholars of or those who know hadith, muhaddisun, have the religious authority. And this is the view of majority of Muslim scholars, Western scholars also believe. And that's, I think, the point Patricia Crone wants to throw some water in their nest, that kind of she adopt this view, criticize that, and I think some of the things she did is useful for us. So I go this briefly fast. Look, Western scholars of Islam generally believe it to have been caliphate being a purely political institution, and then as the majority of Sunnis say, caliph didn't have any religious authority. And that the religious authority was prerogative of scholars, which is the view of classical Islam, but developed much later. But as Patricia Crone claims, and we will focus on the Umayyad, we don't discuss about the first three caliphs. Okay, that's interesting. Her book is mostly about that. But we don't need to go for that. The early caliphate was conceived along very different from the classical institution. All religious and political authority being concentrated in it. It was the caliph who was charged with the definition of Islamic law, the very core of the religion, and without allegiance to caliph, no Muslim could achieve salvation. Look, the caliphate had religious authority, and we are looking to the Umayyads, especially. So it's not that what they say was a political local religion we protected. They were looked to as imams. And exactly as I'm saying in the next slide, this is the Shia view of how caliphate should be, political religious authority. But the difference is that this in Islam, the Shiism should be an infallible guide. But this all authority is given to such a person like Yazid or Muawiyah. Look, this is like you have a very powerful instrument, tool, and then you give it weapon and give it to some completely irresponsible person. That's the whole thing. Where in Shia Islam, when we say both authorities should be in one person, we also add these are only a few person, 12 infallible guides besides Prophet Muhammad. So let's see. Practically all the literature, Western and many Sunni sources inform us that Prophet was God's representative on earth in both political and religious matters. There's no dispute in this. There ceased to be a single representative in religious matters on the Prophet's death. That's the Sunni view. Political power passed to the new head of state, the Caliph, but religious authority remained the Prophet himself, or differently put it, passed to those who remember what he had said. In the Sunni Islam, the religious authority was spread to those who knows his sayings, hadith. That's knowing hadith was very important. And then these men, the companion, and transmitted the recollection of Prophet's word and these to the next generation, who passed it to the next, and so forth. And whoever learned what the Prophet had said and done acquired religious authority thereby. This is the image now Sunni says what had happened. But she claims this wasn't the case. And I add, yes, this wasn't the case. And the fact this maybe have become the case partially, that Sunni ulama get some religious authority and snap that religious authority out of the hand of the caliphs is just because of the uprising of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. If it had not happened, we would have only a caliph, such a Yazid, which have both religious and political authority. You know, this tension exists in Europe too. Most of you know the history of Europe better than me. There's a pope and emperors. There were two persons. They're always in conflict. And that who has religious authority, how much political authority, how much they have, always is dispute. So, but let's go forward. But we know Shia view of the imamate, it was different. You know, so this is again the first line summarizes the Sunni view. In short, while political power continued to be concentrated in one man, religious authority was not dispersed among those people who, owing their authority entirely to their learning, came to be known as simply the ulama, the scholars. This is Sunni view. They have it, it is the case. Most Shiites disagree with this view. According to Imamis and related sects, the legitimate heads of the state inherited not only the political but also the religious authority of the Prophet. That's the view an Imam, Shia Imam is. But in practice, of course, we know this legitimate head of state, Ali, was deprived of his political power by other people, so that he could only function as purely religious leader of his Shia following. But in principle, he was both head of state and ultimate authority on question of law and doctrine in Islam. Muawiyah, and especially, you know, he understood what he's doing. He didn't want the religious authority goes away. He captured both religious and political authority. It's the whole thing is that now you give this whole power of both, not to an infallible person, but the one is arch enemy of religion, and they have the hatred of the Prophet and religion themselves. And his son is so ignorant that openly expresses hostility. Now let's go back to the title. Now it's the core of the talk. I know I have some time, but I think we can go through that. Look, what is in the title? I'm looking what is the caliphal titles is. The answer is a lot. I mean, I listed a few of them. Shah of Iran called himself Arya Mer, the son of Aryans. Now, after the revolution, Imam Khomeini was called the founder of Islamic Revolution. The new leader is called the founder of Islamic Republic. The new leader is called the leader of Islamic Revolution. That's have a different connotation. When you are leader of Islamic Republic, you're geographically limited or time was limited. The leader of Islamic Revolution, maybe you assume revolution is continuing. I'm saying these titles historically very important. You have other title, and then, for example, for the Queen Elizabeth, the official title is that Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, the United Kingdom, Great Britain, Northern Ireland, and other realms and territories, Queen, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith. So you know this official title is historically very important. And what they want to project, what is the idealism, what is the goal is. So she is still defender of the faith by the grace of God. So she has the grace of God. So look, these titles are important so that we know that. Now, what are the title of the first four caliphs? This is the established history. I'm not going to dispute Abu Bakr, Umar, Osman, what it is, what is not. It is what is Sunnis mostly believe. Actually, Patricia Crone disputs some of this, but at least the meaning of it, but everybody agrees what Umayyads call themselves. And I'm focusing on Umayyad, but just to give his story complete and give it to you. So Abu Bakr, when come to power, he calls himself successor of the messenger of God, Khalifatul Rasulullah. I will discuss a little bit more about the word Khalifat in a minute. And Umar came after Abu Bakr. First, he calls himself successor of the successor of messenger of God, and successor of Abu Bakr. Okay. And then Umar, generally later on, seems preferred commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'minin. Osman, it seems the first one called himself not Khalifatul Rasulullah or Khalifatul Rasulullah. He calls himself Khalifatullah. He directly goes to God. He's short-circuiting Prophet Muhammad, and he is the deputy of God. Whether Osman has said or not, which it seems has said, whether he said it the first year or said it later on, it seems later on definitely he said it after 7th year. But this is the official title of all the Umayyads. So that's my focus will be. And then Imam Ali alayhi salam, after Osman used the same title, which is commander of the faithful, Umar had used. And then if you look to the Nahjul Balagha, always Imam will start official letters. There are I think 7 and 8 of them. I went to the Nahjul Balagha letters, and all of them starts like this. Min Abdullah, Ali, Amir al-Mu'minin, Allah. So from a servant of God, Ali, the commander of faithful too. He always starts his letter like that. These are official letters when you write, and then you signing underneath, for example, CEO of this company or president of this country. Okay. Now, what about the title of Khalifatullah? And a little bit also we need to look at the word Khalifa. This is important. We take as our starting point the well-known fact that Umayyads means use the title of Khalifatullah, an expression which along with many other understand to mean deputy of God, representative of God. Look, the Khalifa can have two meanings. Successor, and in Arabic have two meanings, which is successor or deputy. But the point is that you cannot success God, because God is always there. You can success maybe Prophet Muhammad because Prophet Muhammad passed away. So you cannot be success God. You can only be deputy of God. Khalifatullah cannot mean anything else. And the Khalifatullah means you're representative of God. That is, they're claiming these corrupt caliphs are the representative of God, and there. This is then what they say is the religion of God. I want you to have in mind. So deputy in the Webster or Oxford Dictionary, Webster, I think, a person whose immediate superior is senior figure within an organization and who's empowered to act as a substitute for the superior. So look this last part. When you're deputy, you are empowered to act as substitute for this superior. You're empowered to act on behalf of God on the earth. Title of Khalifatullah. This translation is scarcely need in much of defense. A Khalif, as explained that the meaning of deputy or successor, what will be? There are two Quranic verses which this word is referred to, Khalifa. But they don't say Khalifatullah, those explicitly the Quran doesn't say, just Khalifa. That's one is related to Adam, one of them is David, one is verse 28 of Surah Baqarah, one is chapter 38, verse 25. It's interesting to go that, but I don't have time to go that. If anybody sees, you can look the Quran and doesn't contradict to us to what we said. Now, so the title of all Umayyads is Khalifatullah. It started from Osman. Then when Muawiyah came, immediately Khalifatullah means deputy of God. And by the way, what I'm writing is not mine mostly here. These are all either directly from Patricia Crone or a little paraphrased. So I really try to, in these parts, do not bring anything of myself that show, look, she's saying this stuff. Now, deputy of God is a title which implies a strong claim to religious authority. That's what's Crone arguing. Muawiyah is not just a secular ruler. Although the first day, after peace for Prophet Imam Hussain, when he entered to Kufa, he has a strange khutbah, which it seems he's claiming, yes, you do know I'm not carrying, I don't do anything with your religion. You know your religion. I just want to secure the border, build, let you have the commerce, build you roads, stuff like that. And so he claims a kind of secularism, but clearly, this wasn't, he did all those 20 years. And this is why we are interested in. That's the beauty of God means religious authority, and we must begin by establishing 3 basic points. And then this is what Patricia Crone wants to do. I will show what he does, but we go a little bit different line. First, it is attested not just for some Umayyad caliphs, but for all of them, or more precisely, for all of those who lived to rule more than 1 year. Second, it was an official designation of the Umayyad head of state, not just a term of flattery. You know, it could be somebody say, "Oh, you're like deputy of God, you're such and such and so." But you know, for example, Fahd called himself Khadim al-Haramain. Kings of Saudi called themselves Khadim al-Haramain. They don't call themselves Khalifatullah. So okay, they say, okay, look, these people call you. They would say, we don't call ourselves Khalifatullah. We call Khadim al-Haramain. But no, Muawiyah Umayyads called officially themselves Khalifatullah. Third, it was well known to be what the title of Khalifa stood for and when used on its own. And there was no ambiguity. Umayyads know what they mean by that. They use it that way. All the poets, even, you know, poets like Farazdak, you have read his name, that even in the way Imam Hussein, I think he met Imam Hussein just before the Imam Hussein go to Karbala, or he definitely he said a very interesting poem about Imam Sajjad, but also when he talked with Umayyads, you know, he has this phrase used by him. Now, there are this partition from this fantastic job searching all the literature, find some attestations. I show you two. Muawiyah says, the earth belongs to God and I'm the beauty of God. Yazid says, wow to you. I think it's maybe against anybody uprising against him. Wow to you, have separated from the Sunnah and Jama'ah, who have disobeyed the deputy of God. So clearly means he considered himself deputy of God. The official nature of the title. The Khalifatullah was an official title of the Umayyad head of state, is clear from attestation. Now, when it is that official, you would see this on the coins. And what I have to add here is this. Look, our direct evidence from Muawiyah and Yazid is a little scarce. What we claim is that even after Imam Husayn's uprising, they continued on this path. If Imam Hussein slowed their acceleration, and at the end they were stopped by the Shia Abbasid revolution, essentially Shia Abbasid revolution. But the claim is, if Imam Hussein had not uprised, they have gone full force with this line, and despite this, despite all the civil wars, despite all the costs they have to go through after Ashura uprising, Mukhtar uprising, Penitent uprising, still they're insistent on this line. So this was their main plan. So it appears on the coins, this title of Khalifatullah. They use it in all their statements. So it's very seriously is over there. And as I said, everybody also, I'm not going to go through that now, everybody also know that, use that. And also it used with some other titles that corroborate it really means like that. And one of the connotation is this. Look, that's part I said Sunni ulama were very indebted to uprising Imam Hussein and the whole change in this ideas of their deputy of God. Look, Khalifatullah as a title, if taken seriously, leaves no rules for ulama. If God's manifest is built through caliphs here and now, there is no need to seek guidance from scholars who remember what the Prophet had said in the past. The Umayyad also took the title very seriously. They saw themselves as representatives of God on earth in most literal sense of the word, as it is clear from a long letter by Walid II. Look, we don't have any direct official document from Muawiyah to say that, but we have some person after him, one of the caliphs of Umayyads, Walid II. And that document is left for us, one of the story books, I think Tabari have completely reported it. And then you can see this is a kind of a template letter that maybe have been used for a while. So you can see the whole ideas were developed, if not by Muawiyah exactly, but by the time of Marwan or Abdul Malik Marwan. So this is the general ideology of that Umayyad rule. And then they add, for example, God has made the earth over to them. And then they use also the word Amin Allah, besides Khalifullah, trustee of God, is another title they regularly use it. And then and the petition concludes that, you know, that's this title of Khalifatullah is the one really the scholars, even the scholars time of Umayyad, which are not Shia, or some of them even work with the Umayyads. You know, some of the scholars cooperate, some of the Sunni didn't cooperate. Abu Hanifa didn't cooperate much with them, but there are scholars, for example, Ozai from Lebanon, which every Lebanese know, cooperate with Umayyads, was quaternary scholar, but they don't like him in this title because that kind of removed for them any need for them. The pieties of God and scholars were rival. Now, there is a little bit also elaboration what really they meant. They push it forward. That we shall now elaborate on the Umayyad conception of the Caliphate function with special reference to the views on the relationship between themselves and the Prophet. It is a striking fact that such documentary evidence as survives from the Sufyani period. Look, this is an interesting how they looked at themselves, and this is one of the important features. It is striking fact that such documentary evidence as survives from the Sufyani period makes no mention of the Messenger of God at all. The Patriarch do not refer to him. The Arabic inscription of the Arab Sasanian coins only evoke Allah, not his Rasul. And their coins have Allah, Khalifatullah. Look, Allah was the general name of God, and the Arabs before Islam used it, as Quran attests to it, Christian used it, and the Supreme God was accepted, and he was Khalifa. They were Khalifatullah. They don't have any problem. God is in the heaven, and they are this reputee here. But there is no mention of the name of his Rasul. The Arab Byzantine bronze coins, which name of Prophet Muhammad appears as Rasulullah. Previously, this is Patricia Krohn says, previously we thought it is from Sufyanid area, now we know it's from Marwanids. So, and then he says, even the two surviving pre-Marwani tombstones fail to mention the Rasul, though both mention Allah, and the same is true of Mavi inscription at all. Look, these inscriptions are official documents. We have in Iran, in Persepolis and other places, we have all the kings have make those plaques and write the main. Some of them were detailed. Is the philosophy, ideology, the most important thing of that government. If the name is missing, that name means it's not important. And how in Islamic empire and government there is no mention of name of the Prophet Muhammad. And then so essentially what I was claiming, they were really in the business of eliminating the name of Prophet Muhammad. These sentences are Patricia Krohn, not mine. In the Sufyani period, apparently the Prophet had no public acknowledged role. This is not to say that he did not matter in the Sufyani period. She said, though exactly what he was taken to be at the time is far from clear, but it does suggest that he played no legitimacy role in Sufyani political period. They don't care about Prophet Muhammad. Essentially, they've short-circuited. They go Khalifat Allah, they directly to God. There is no need to name a prophet, and that the whole plan was to erase the name of the prophet. The literature of Sufyani suggests the same. The earth belongs to God and the beauty of God, as Muawiyah is said to have put it. What the prophet may or may not have been was not from this point of view of any importance. And actually that Tom Holland and that Dan Gibson guy, which I don't know if you guys have seen it, but in Muslim community in Iran, they distribute these documentaries, which are absolutely nonsense. Actually, that's the main argument. They say, oh, there is no name of the Prophet Muhammad in the description in these documents, so Prophet Muhammad didn't exist. That time came later. That's what they say, absolutely nonsense. But we say, look, it is not there because Umayyad erased it. It was before and it is after, but Umayyads are the business of completely eliminating the name of Prophet. Now, what happens? But there is something changed. And then Patricia Krohn doesn't say what happens. And that's interesting. He says something changed. These are her sentences, but it doesn't say the cause. He said all these, of course, changed dramatically on the accession of Marwanids. In 66 after Hijrah, the first known coin identifying Muhammad and Rasulullah was struck at Bishabur in Fars in Iran by a pro-Zubayrid governor. In 71 after Hijri, the message was repeated in another Arab Sasanian dirham struck at the same place, this time by a supporter of Umayyad. Therefore, reference to Muhammad as Rasulullah became a standard feature of Arab numismatic inscription, which is there still. Further, in 72 after Hijri, Muhammad and Jesus were both identified as messenger of God in two long inscriptions on the octagonal arcade of the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. So, what happened after 66 AH? What happened? These names come back, which wasn't there before that. Between the 68 after Hijra and 68 after Hijra, we have Ashura uprising. And then after Ashura uprising, we have Mukhtar, we have Tababin, we have Zubayrid uprising. That uprising, maybe Yazid doesn't come to his senses, but the Sufyanis were, the Marwanids were smarter than Sufyanis. Marwanids noticed, look, we cannot go like this. We cannot continue to rule being openly hostile to Islam or indifferent to Islam. We need at least a superficial covering of Islamic color to at least we claim we're Islamic and we are not openly hostile. It's no use for us to rule like that. So they changed course in the policy of Sufyanid, which is total elimination of Prophet Muhammad, because the cost was high. You know, this Abdul Malik Marwan raised to power at 64. Look, 66 is the year they coined. He had 8 years to fight civil war to overcome Zubayrids. I mean, he used Zubayrids to overcome Mukhtar and Shia. They deceived Mukhtar and Shia and massacred them in Kufa. Then he had to fight back Zubayrids to conquer Hijaz. And but it was very costly. And as I told you, the proto-Sunnah we have come out of the Zubayrids. And even Abdul Malik Marwan noticed after killing some of the Zubayr sons, he went to some other brothers, some other sons of Zubayr, and said to them, okay, come on to Damascus and let's write the hadith books. That's exactly what happened. Urwat ibn Zubayr, the son, one of the sons of Zubayr, brother of Abdullah Zubayr who uprised, fought with Mukhtar and so on, which Abdullah Zubayr was with Imam Hussein. You know, Abdullah Zubayr, Yazid won bay'ah from Abdullah Zubayr and Imam Hussein, sent a letter to governor of Medina. Both of them moved from Medina to Mecca, but Zubayr Abdullah Zubayr really want Imam Hussein leave Mecca to go to Kufa because he knew as far as Imam Hussein is Mecca, nobody would listen to him. But when Imam Hussein martyred in Ashura, Zubayr uprised. But one other brother, Urwa, was invited by Abdul Malik al-Marwan, the Caliph of Umayyad Caliph, come to Damascus, and between Mecca and Medina and Mecca, Damascus, we're going to write hadiths, we're going to write history books, and his student, Urwa ibn Zubayr, is much of the narrator of history. I'm sorry, Abdul Shahab al-Zuhri, the student of Urwa ibn Zubayr, is much narrator of history. Look, this Sunnah started exactly after this. Reality, the hadith books, history books. I mean, there was not sometimes separate from Shia and Sunni, you have mixture narrators, but that's exactly the difference. And Patricia Quran doesn't say that at all. It just says, okay, this happened. And then you see here, I show you a picture here. I'm not sure exactly how old the coin is, which one it is. It's an old one. I'm not sure which one it is, but you see clearly the name Muhammad Rasulullah. You know, even the epigraphic coinage, which apparently started 77 in the case of dinars. This is 77. It seems they start to name of the Rasulullah in the dinars is 77. They put it on the dirham 78, and then then they gradually make it longer sentences. There is no God but Allah alone, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, who is sent with guidance and true religion. So you see, the completely change, the whole dynamic change. Now instead of completely going against religion, they start the name of Rasulullah came. So during the government, I kind of summarize here, during the governorship of Abdulaziz Marwan, or repeating it, what did. That's even the Karbala did. The Sufyan Marwanis were smarter or shrewder or whatever you call them. They changed the course, and that's also the difference. Look, after this, we do not have any ruler openly hostile to Islam. After this, at the time of Abbasid, at least we have some scholarships, some religion, some texts, some hadiths, something kept to be there, which at least knowledge is somehow kept. It was at the time of Umayyad. If I can show some of the policies which he was really actively was tweaking the religion, distorting the religion, but definitely we know that Marwanids were not better personally. They would drink alcohol, drinker too. They were debauchers too. But at least they give better face. That's the whole thing. Now, there is some interesting stuff, detail also can help us better what they understood of Caliphate, what plan they have. But what we said about the coin, stuff like that, doesn't give us exactly the theory which this Umayyad had regarding the Caliphate. The better way to do is, as I said, there is a letter. I'm not going through the details, but there are a couple of letters fully remain. And one of the letters is the succession letter. When one of the caliphs wanted to designate a successor, he wrote to the garrison cities. And the letter is the most detailed document we possess in respect of what may be termed the Umayyad theory of the state. So that's the one. And then Al-Walid sketches history, have a theory of history, and he divides history in two parts. And that's interesting. Look how they very cleverly downplay prophets. You say the whole history of humankind are divided two parts. One is the prophets, another one caliphs. We have age of prophets, we have age of caliphs. Okay, we have kind of similar too. We had age of prophets and we have Nabuwah, and we have age of imams. So look, they know how to parallel processing it. Paraphrasing. Then it says, Prophet Muhammad represents the culmination of prophethood. On his death, the era of the prophets came to it. Okay. Now the era of caliphs began. This is the official document of Umayyads. When on the death of the Prophet Muhammad, God raised up deputies to administer the legacy of his prophets. So initially said, okay, we're deputy of God. God puts us here to administer the legacy of the Prophet. But then the letter adds, the bulk of the letter is devoted to the supreme importance of obedience to God's caliphs. Whoever obeys will flourish. Whoever disobey will be punished in both this one and the next. So the whole religion is gradually reduced to obedience in this kind of caliphs. This is very much emphasized. The fact Imam Hussein did not bay'ah is of disobedience, coming out of the religion, coming out of that Sunnah Jama'ah which they want to build. As we were told time and again. What is so striking, these are not my sentences, all Patricia Crone. What is so striking about this letter is and this is still 50 years after Ashura, they have audacity to say that. What is so striking about this letter is that caliphs are in no way subordinated to prophets, let alone to the prophet. Prophets and caliphs are alike, are seen as God agents, and both dutifully carry out the task assigned to them. The former by delivering messages, and the latter by putting them in effect. The caliphs are the legatees of the prophets in the sense that they administer something established by them, but they do not owe their authority to them. They do not do authority to them, to the prophets or Prophet Muhammad. Their authority comes directly from God. In other words, formerly God used prophets, now uses caliphs. It's like similar to Soteria Post. And then Muhammad, and then still they go further. Muhammad still is a prophet with small p. Obviously, he was the prophet most relevant to Al-Walid and his subjects, being a successful messenger who worked among Arabs, who created a community of which God had not put Al-Walid in charge. So there is an Arab supremacy here too. And somehow Islam as a religion for the Arabs, this dimension is also, starts from Umar. This is also a little bit, at least Umayyad is completely of Arab supremacy. I'm not going through that. But now, look what they add. But he was still one out of many, and he stood at the end of an era, not at the beginning of one. So, okay, Prophet Muhammad is great, successful, we converted to him, but his era is finished. Now we are here. Messages belong to the past. The present had been made over to caliphs. They're also reflecting the stories in which Umayyad governors and others credited God's deputy with status higher than of his messenger. So, they themselves maybe not say themselves this stuff, the caliphs, the Umayyad caliphs, but let their representative, the governors in the city, start to even bolster the status higher, much put him above, higher than the prophet. So they start playing with the word. One of the things they start to do that, they said, who's higher, a messenger or deputy? They, for example, you say I'm messenger of so-so, I'm deputy of so-so. Messenger of God, deputy of God. They said even that the deputy is higher. Look, because messenger just deliver a message. It could be a page, a boy, doesn't know much. You give a message, go give it to this one. Well, we're deputy. We are representative of the God. When the guy will send us here. So look, this has said. I'm not. I mean, this sentence even as for me is Patricia Crone, but they have said that. And this sounds strange. I mean, Patricia Crone adds. This sounds strange, but because it is clear that everyone knew better, what is being offered is simply a clever argument. Yeah, it is a clever argument. It's a trick. But they are so daring to say this kind of trick. And then one of the examples you have, which these represent their governors do that. The famous one is Hajjaj ibn Yusuf Sagafi, which was cruel. The time of his rule in Kufa was very, very, very bad. But look what they say. They were daring to say that. This is recorded in the books. It's not that Shia books wrote them. It's history books, Sunni books. Hajjaj was of opinion that who circumambulated the tomb of Prophet Muhammad Medina should rather circumambulate the palace of Abdul Malik. So believe me, if Muawiyah hasn't not died that early, or Imam Hussein hasn't uprised, or he wasn't so, stupid or ignorant, if they could go with the plan, maybe now we were going to the tomb of Muawiyah for pilgrimage, or we're circumambulating palace of Abdul Malik. I told you, the majority of them are not Muslims. They don't know anything. And those guys in Damascus didn't know who the family of Prophet is, and they thought they'd bring some Kharijis. They were that illiterate idiot. I'm sorry. Since one's deputy caliph is better than one's messenger. So look, that argument now goes to this level. And in the course of Friday oration, he asked people whether any member of the audience would prefer his messenger or his deputy. Look, they're working in the mind of God. And then in a letter to Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik, he wrote, God honored his caliph on earth over his messenger. Look, these they wrote, they daring said that. And another letter, Hajjaj, is also written, the heavens and earth exist only by the caliphate. And the caliph in God's eyes is more favored than cherubim and the prophets sent. This is why God created Adam with his hand and made the angels worship him and placed him in paradise. Then sent him down to earth and appointed him as caliph vicegerent. Now you see play. Because Adam was caliph, this Abdul Malik or whatever is Hisham is caliph, and angels bowed to them. Caliph, playing with the words, bowed to the caliph, they're bowing to this caliph which is sitting here. So they sent him down to earth and appointed him caliph, vicegerent, and made the angels messenger to him. Look, these guys also read Quran too. Look, this Hajjaj was cruel ruler, but he has some literary taste. And it seems he is the one for the Rasm al-Quran. You know, Quran, when it was combined, Arabic didn't have diacritical marks. They don't have nuqat, you know, so or fatha kasra or ta ya. So some of these added. One of the innovations they ascribed alif al-maqsura, you know, the small asa. It seems Hajjaj ordered to be placed in the mushafs. So yeah, these guys show their interest to make their own religion. Okay, I will finish my 5 or 10 minutes, so I have 5 minutes from 1 hour. But this one is interesting. I apologize that I couldn't translate it. I was going to translate it, but I will read it for you. So I give you the general example what these Umayyads were doing. Now I give you a few examples of Muawiyah specifically, and there could be longer talk even to talk about. I just find a book. Look, we have 4 mazhab: Maliki, Sunni, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali, Hanafi, and then some called the 5th Jafari. I noticed one of these, there really was a fiqh school, which you call it Umayyad. That's the best name. And this Umayyad school didn't care about the hadith of Prophet Muhammad. They justify whatever Muawiyah does in somehow religiously. They're big scholars, like Awza'i is the biggest scholar Lebanon had. You know, for example, if you go to Beirut or Al-Sunnah, Lebanon, everybody knows Awza'i. So, and then also these guys, completely. If Abbasi revolution didn't happen, maybe the biggest school of will be out of those 4 Ahl Sunnah would be Umayyad school. So and then we clearly see how Muawiyah was playing games. Now this one is interesting. It's Musannaf Abdul Razak, Ahl Sunni book, and then look, there are 3 level. Muawiyah is the caliph. Marwan, which later will be caliph, is the governor of Hijaz, and then he has a person called Usayd ibn Zuhair al-Ansari, which was the governor of some region in Hijaz, Yamama, a smaller region. So then Muawiyah, Marwan, Usayd. Marwan wrote to Usayd that, look, Muawiyah has written to me that if a person, if somebody has stolen something from him, you know, for example, you have something and stolen from you, and then a few days later you walk in the market and you saw it, so then you can claim this mine, it was stolen from me. So that's Muawiyah's ruling was. So it is mine. That's his rule was, and I don't think detail as important, but after that, okay, this Usayd ibn Zuhair wrote to the Marwan, look, Marwan, I'm your governor, but wrote to Muawiyah, which you're ahead of you, that Prophet Muhammad didn't do like this. Abu Bakr didn't do like this, Umar didn't like this, and Osman didn't like this. So this wasn't the Sunnah, clearly telling Muawiyah in a very official document of government that this, what you say, wasn't the Sunnah of Prophet, Abu Bakr, Umar, Osman. And then Imam Ali is definitely not mentioned because Muawiyah, okay, anyway, eliminate anything about Imam Ali. And then he told him, look, Prophet was Sunnah was this. If somebody was stolen, find it somewhere, can go tell that person, look, what you have is stolen from me. I would be thankful, but he cannot pick it up by himself. So that's mine, pick it up. Because this would create this chaos. I don't know why Muawiyah wants to do that. But then either he has the one who's things stolen from him, now finding it, the third person, ask it, sell it to me, please, I need it, I will pay the price for it. Or he has to find the thief, because we cannot show what is with the other guy was really belonged to this guy first, or was it exactly similar, or what? This was chaos, and nobody did that. I know it's stolen from you is not good, but look, we have to have evidence this really belonged to you, and we don't. Maybe the thief, the first thief, has sold it to somebody else. The second guy has paid for it, so we need to find the thief. Or at most, you can tell him if the guy was willing to sell it to you. Okay, maybe he's willing to sell it to you. But what happened is this. Marwan wrote to the Muawiyah, and Muawiyah replied, look, and nakalasta anta wala usayd zahir biqazin alayya. He said, Muawiyah told him, neither you, Marwan, now Usayd, can give me, qazi me, judging me, give me, ordering me, giving rule to me. But me, I am the caliph. Abza fima wallaita alaykuma. I am the one who order you and command you and judge you. And I have authority over you. So do whatever I've ordered you. So so look, exactly they told. This is not the Sunnah Prophet, and maybe he knew it already, Muawiyah. And he said, okay, whatever you say, I don't care. This is what I say. You are under my command. You order. And look, interestingly, what word he used? Walaya, wallaytu alaykuma. And then even in the latter line, فَانْفَزَ لَمَا أَمَرْتُكَ بِهِ فَبَعْثَ مَرْوَانَ إِلَى بِكِتَابِ مُعَاوِيَةَ فَقُلْتُ لَا أَخْزَ بِمَا وَلَّيْتَ. Yeah, and Marwan wrote to us, said, look, he ordered us, we cannot do anything. And interestingly, Muawiyah used the root walaya. Walayta means authority, political authority. This is exactly the dispute we Ahl Sunnah bi Khutbah al-Qadir. We say when a prophet says, "Man kuntu mawla fahaza aliyan mawla," walaya means rulership. No, they say friendship, wasiya, something like that. Muawiyah exactly used the same root, walaya, and then says, "I am your governor. I'm ordering you. Listen, do it." Okay, I'll give you a few examples. I think I'll finish it in a few minutes. It also says that Muawiyah, one of, for example, ruler, he has ordered Arabs to not marry non-Arab women, but not reverse, which they don't have in Islam. I'm giving a few examples. There are many of these, which is small tweaking. You start with the small tweaking, gradually go up. The first day, you don't kill the grandson of Prophet, but after 20 years, you can do that. And you think you're getting reward of heaven. But not let the Arabs want to marry non-Arabs and to disallow inheritance from living Arabs and not to give non-Arab women property of gifts. This is to keep money in the hands of Arab tribes. So tribalism, Arab supremacy, he doesn't care about Islam. One interesting thing is regarding this, we have it with Ahl Sunnah. When they do their prayer, they don't say, at first they don't consider Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim part of a surah, the beginning of surah. They don't recite it loud, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And we know one of the hadiths of Imams, Imam 10th Imam, I guess, it says one of the sign of Shia is, for example, is Ziyarat al-Arba'in, having aqiq, and one of them is reciting Bismillah loud. Why Bismillah loud? Because Bismillah was recited loud by Abu Bakr, recited loud by Umar, but and most probably Osman, but it was Muawiyah which is insisting to not recite it loud or not reciting it. And then one time when he visited Medina, he did it in a Jama'ah prayer, which was the Imam, that all those companions told him, why you did that, why you didn't say that, rebuke him. But he said, oh, he gives some answer as usual. You know, when they do a mistake like this of a president in the United States, Trump, they find a way to get away from it. But he tweaks it. He does it when the people respond. If they don't respond, it goes back, then come back again. and there are lists of it. I'm sorry, this is Persian. I couldn't translate it, but you know, many things. He's the first one publicly buying and selling alcohol. He allowed two sisters marry with the same person. He allowed interest. He allowed change the whole diyats, you know, blood money at the time of Prophet. He is the one, for example, dropped labbaik in the Kaaba or Hajj ziyarah. Look, it's small things, but it start to tweak it. But this is the beginning. If he has lived longer, or Yazid was smarter, the whole religion was changed. And one of the things, for example, killing the killing Amr ibn Hamak and cut their heads, put them on their spears. This is he started before Karbala to rotating in the cities. And one interesting thing also, we have problem in Shia communities too. You know, in the Eid prayers, first you have 2 rakat salah and then the khutbah. And then sometimes people after the 2 rakat salah leave, don't listen to imams. Even we have in Shia community, the khutbah. And then at the time of Muawiyah wants to la'an. Unfortunately, Imam Ali alayhi salam, the khutbahs. He changed the order because he noticed after 2 rakat prayer, people leave. He start first do the khutbah and then 2 rakat prayer. Okay. And one very interesting example, which I think summarizes everything. What I said, which is intention of Muawiyah, it is clearly stated in a hadith in Sunni books. This is narrated by Zubayr ibn Bakar, which is one of the children of Abdullah ibn Zubayr family, actually. But the name is Zubayr, but descended from Zubayr too. He died in 256 after Hijrah, you know, so it's not, it's just before even Ghaibatul Sughra starts, and it's the book Muwaffaqiyat, and he narrates it from Mutrif, son of Mughayr ibn Shu'bah. Mughayr ibn Shu'bah was a very close friend of Muawiyah. Muawiyah put him in governorship. Actually, he's a very shady guy. The one who assassinated Umar was working for him, Abu Lolo, the Persian, for him, and he was very young man, treat him very badly. So we are not sure even the assassination of Umar wasn't a plot to get rid of him because he was not complying completely. This is theory, let's put it aside. But the point is this, Zubayr ibn Bakar, I'm sorry, I would give you the mazmoon, it will finish. Look, the mazmoon is simple. He says this, Mughayr ibn Shu'bah always visit Muawiyah, regularly visit Muawiyah. Every time come back from visit, told his children, oh, Muawiyah is such a great, such a wise guy, such a smart guy. Because what Muawiyah did, lots of futuhat, lots of money, lots of castles, palaces, you know, all the worldly things going up. And every day was happy with him. I mean, coming back, say, oh, what a great smart dude, fellow this guy is. Well, one day we come back home very upset, angry, and his children first thought something wrong was done by them, and they asked him what's going on. He said, I was with Muawiyah, this guy is so wicked. And I said, why he's so wicked? Because I told him when he was nobody there and me and alone him was sitting over there, I told him, look, you are so powerful. This end of his 20 years of Muawiyah. You have achieved everything. You have all the control. You have all the military, all the money. So let's be more friendlier with this Bani Hashim. What's the use of it? You treat them so badly. You degrade them. You so hostile to them. These are your cousins. It's still tribal idea. They were all cousins, you know, from Quraysh, stuff like that. And then they cannot do anything with you. They're all just alone, you know. They're few peoples. They don't have much money, power. And then Muawiyah returned back to him. Look, what? I mean, he used a kind of exclamation. What you're talking about? Abu Bakr came, God ruled, and Futuhat, he died. His name was forgot. I mean, occasionally people remember Abu Bakr. I mean, most probably those times was less mentioned. Nowadays, not part of the religion of Ahl Sunnah, which partially is done by the latter construction, and even Muawiyah was ruling it. Oh, then he says Omar reached to government. He did many things. He conquered, and he died. His name is forgotten. Then our cousin Osman reached, which has the best ancestry, get the government. They killed him, and his name completely was lost. And then look, but this Hashemite man, he means referring derogatory to Prophet Muhammad. His name every day I have to listen in the azans 5 times. This guy's Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And then he said, you think if I die, any name will left from me? And then he said, I will not rest until bury this name. This is written. So this is really his intention is. And one of the interesting things, look, he may have built a religion. Believe me, he was there. He lived longer. If Yazid could follow his plans, if Imam Hussain had not uprised, maybe a new religion, the best person in it was Muawiyah. Because he maybe was looking to conquest all the world. He's the tried twice to conquer Constantinople. He conquered much of the North Africa. And then there is a recent article came that he started to do grand construction in even Jerusalem. And he maybe have as intention to move the capital Jerusalem. And this move is not political, just political, it's religious. He wants to get the inheritance of all Christianity, Judaism, and Islam and make an amalgamation. And he has the capital, Jerusalem, capital of the world. So if he had not stopped, or Imam Hussein has a rise to stop their plans, if not Yazid, other Umayyad would follow them. But they want to, I finish with this verse, that they desire to put out the light of God with their mouths, but God will perfect his light, though the faithless should be averse. Muawiyah maybe didn't want to erase the name of Prophet Muhammad, but he planned, God planned. It is he who has sent his apostles with guidance and the true religion, that he make it prevail over all religions, though the politics should be averse. Salawati.
Thank you very much for your talk, Dr. Farhad, covering a large amount of material in the time, and that's really, really good that you were able to cover that, and it's really extremely interesting that the discussions that you made and the points that you made in a way that perhaps we haven't seen before. Many people talk about how Imam Hussein alayhi salam has saved Islam, but very few people are able to find a way to prove it or to show it so powerfully. And in summary, one could argue that the key point you're making is that if you look at Muawiyah's time and the direction and the trajectory that Islam was going in prior to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and the way it was going in terms of the coins, in terms of all the independent analysis and evidence that's out there, it shows that it's quite clear that the leadership of the community, the Arab community rather than the Islamic community, were trying to remove Prophet Muhammad and almost de-Islamicize Islam, I think is the way I summarize it, and almost Arabicize it or make it personal to them, and the sacrifice of Muhammad Hussein alayhi salam completely seems to have been the point at which, when you look objectively at all the evidence, it seems to be the point at which that trajectory seems to suddenly start turning back, and that's a really powerful argument that you've given with all the evidence that you've shown. And I think that's really, really interesting. I have my own questions, but if there are any other questions, please feel free to message me directly on the chat, on Zoom, or on YouTube, or just let me know, or put your hand up if you're in the Zoom call. I know that many of you are watching on YouTube, so that's different. Ahmed Versi, I think you had a question, so let me ask you to go first.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. There's two things. One, you have just presented what Patricia Cron has said. What is your opinion on this, the whole argument that you put forward? Do you agree with her points or not?
Yeah, yes. Look, the way, yes, it's hers, but I agreed. If I didn't agree, I wouldn't do that. And then, I framed it, because I agree with the conclusion, and I want to not argue from Shia books, Hadith books, Sunni books. I want to say, look, this one, which is nemesis, arch enemy against history of Islam, she has said that, look, it's all objective. Even she doesn't mention Imam saying it. No, I agree with it. I really believe Muawiyah, if he had time, would erase the name of Prophet Muhammad. He did his best. He couldn't, because God was there, and then Imam Hussein was the agent. I believe that exactly I'm telling that this explained. I told one of these revisionist guys, to one scholar in France, he has now a 3-volume book of his Quran and historians. Is the most sold books in Quran. I told him, look, you guys revisionists saying strange ideas. She is also revisionist of history of Islam. We say the history of Islam's beginning of Islam was different. Look what she says. Much of your questions are answered. I told one of these guys, I hope it's political if you understand. Look, you guys sometimes say Muhammad bin Salman is par excellence Muslim. And then one of them was saying, I wrote to him, these are our university professors. You said, you guys are strange. Somehow you think Muhammad bin Salman is par excellence Muslim, and whatever he does is Muslim agreed. And then he wants singers and dancers. I don't know, this one's recently invited to Saudi, and then you sing Islam agrees. I said, what kind of argument is the same way Muawiyah, Yazid are arch enemies of Islam? Their heart never accepted that. Yeah, if you want one word, yeah, I think, look, that's how we have to learn. Maybe parts of my training in physics was, and other fields. Look, in physics, physics, one of the most important achievements, standard model of particle physics, which explain whatever we have, Higgs boson, stuff like that. You see all of these guys, like Abdus Salam, which was Nobel Prize from Pakistan, they borrow it from each other. They say some guy did in far field, did something, they notice this is good, they bring it here. The other guy did, and the three people. And then you don't need necessarily, that's what Shia ulama did it when they go to al-Sunni books. So you can go even to Patricia Crone and find here she has all the evidence. But she concluded reverse, or she didn't conclude what else I did. She was focused somewhere else. My conclusion is that what is the change between before 60 AD, which there is no name of Prophet Muhammad, and 66 AD? Uprising Imam Hussayn. You want to mention it, not mention it, and then I can mention it. So yeah, I believe, I honestly believe that, and that's, I think, is important. And I think for Ahl Sunnah are very indebted to Imam Hussayn. There wasn't be any Ahl Sunnah, this scholarship, this history in this form. It would be so contaminated. Already is contaminated, even both sides. But with Imam Hussayn, at least some purity is kept.
So sorry, just you mentioned about you are saying after Imam Hussain, this might have changed. I mean, may be changing. So did you mention also Walid ibn Abdul Malik? He had minted coins where it was written on one side Allah, and then it said Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Yes, but look, after the change. Yes, but when? Look, that's exactly the change when. Look, Muawiyah died 60 Hijrah. Ashura was 61 Hijrah. And then Yazid was till 63, 64, the Caliph. And when he died at 64, Marwanids came. Marwan came, and then the son, Marwan died 6 months, then Abdul Malik came, and all those kings. All these Umayyads, at least, look, so you see the policy goes way. You put an appearance of Islamicity. At least now you appeal to Prophet Muhammad. You don't let your own enemies call you. Look, the first person who coined and put the Prophet Muhammad's name was Zubair group. So your enemy did something, accuse you, and that's we don't know the history. Zubair was the third power. She is in Kufa, Zubair is in Kufa. Zubairi get the mantle of Islamicity, not the Shia style, maybe Proto-Sunni style. They bring the name of Prophet Muhammad. When they put it in their coin, they're emphasizing something our enemy doesn't have. They're all claiming this enemy is more Christianized or non-Islamic. That's one point I didn't emphasize because you're England, I'm US. But I think Yazid was much more easier with Christians, or Christian, mom was Christian, the tribe was Christian, and then it wasn't really just Christian, just drinking from Christianity, stuff like that. And so the tribe was Christian, and we have inscriptions that Bani Kalb tribe, which is a huge tribe, prayed for Yazid, prayed for his success. So I'm not saying there are Christians for Imam Hussain. Zuhair of Ghain was a Christian in Imam Hussein's Shohada Karbala. There were people in the court of Yazid rebuke Yazid. So it's not Christian-Muslim thing. But I'm saying after that, they notice it is costly. Even look, for example, bin Salman right now is changing the policy. This anti-Shia policy of Saudi is shifting through a softening with the Shia, an alternative with Shia, which is no so. The Wahhabi style was a full force against Shia. Now bin Salman notices costly. It's not working well in Iraq. It's not working well in Syria, even work, not in Yemen. So now you are going to have a softer image of Saudi regarding Shia. The same change of course which Marwani have to do. They stick to it. But I'm saying despite this on the surface, in the inside, in the core, still some of those policies continue. If they could, they would go further, but they have to do it more sophisticatedly. The worst guy was Yazid because he didn't get it. You see, one other thing is, these all details. Yazid was all lived in Damascus, around there, partying, going hunting, stuff like that. After that, all the Marwani successors, princes, which going to be the next caliph, usually were governor of Medina. So they send them back to Medina to at least know what's going on. Not like Yazid, knowing nothing about Islam, nothing. At least the guy lives in Medina, have a good time. At least hear something, some ceremony, some religious thing. Know what Hijaz is. So for the Marwan, it was a different one than even that. I'm saying Muawiyah even himself. For 40 years he wasn't in Hijaz. From the Futuhat started, when they his brother first was the governor, Yazid brother of Muawiyah. Then Muawiyah became governor for 40. He wasn't there. He wasn't there after he left the Hijaz. But Marwan was the governor in Medina. And then all the sons gradually before the princes, before become the next caliph, very often with the governor in Medina. So first they have the control, have the familiarity, know the scholars. So when you say, exactly, that's exactly what I'm saying. The policy change and for permanently change. From the time of 66, all the Islamic coins have both name of God and Prophet Muhammad. So that's it. That's the name, at least is on the coin. You know, at this. But I'm saying name on the coin shouldn't deceive us, is in the heart. The name wasn't inscribed on the heart. Their heart wasn't happy with it, but at least they have to have it, the name on the coin.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time. I want to ask the last question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Is there much? So obviously you read Quran extensively, and I'm assuming Wandsworth and all those, the equivalent revivalist or revisionist thinkers. Is there a reason why all of them, almost unanimously, include all the way up to Tom Holland now, don't seem to engage with Imam Hussain alayhi salam at all? Like, is in objective evidence, non-Shia and non-Sunni, whatever, non-Islamic literature, was there not much, you know, celebration is the wrong word, but like big announcement? Like, did people not know about Imam Hussain alayhi salam outside, within, I think, like, did it not reach into non-Islamic lands where this was recorded, and therefore Crone and others and ones would have picked it up and talked about it? Like, what or are we inflating what Imam Hussain alayhi salam did because it didn't reach outside? Like what happened? Like, how come?
You know, this is a good question, because I was reading another book. Again, the guy was the whole Umayyad scholarship, no mention of Imam Hussain. I looked. Sometimes the like, you know, the bats don't like the light. I don't know. Some of these are very biased. You see, I mean, look, some of these are Christian, very biased Christian missionary. Tom Holland is like that. That Dan Gibson is that. Maybe they don't want to mention good or beautiful in Islam. Some Reynolds, for example, he's a much more scholarly academic. He was occasionally they recognize the dimension of suffering of Islam, or Imam Hussain sacrificing it, but not this political accent. Maybe also we haven't done a good job too. This also have to look, the way we are presenting this story of this is more sensitive, what I say, and I hope if you look, the history of Imam Hussain we show, we write, very often is not history. It's mixed with many things, and with some miracles, which maybe some true, but some definitely not, some exaggerations, is tainted. And in some of communities, it becomes more myths going out of the plane of history. You know, Shariati, Dr. Shariati once said about Ali. Ali is a truth like myth. He has all the qualities, not any of the myths have all of them, but he's a true person. Ashura was like that. I think we don't have a critical historical book of Ashura, Imam Hussain uprising, written by us. There is some English translation of the new extracted Abi Makhnaf, or Tabari has it, and then maybe some of these scholars are also influenced by Sunni writing, Sunni interpretation. Look, to your surprise, sometimes, for example, you don't find any mention of Moses in the Pharaonic inscriptions, and sometimes the method is about your arch enemy is complete silence. Some enemies you recognize, some you don't. That's one way. Some, I think, yeah, there is a silence, or at least looking at, but there are not all are like that. But I understand if they, yeah, your point is good. I mean, sometimes when they investigate some aspect. For example, we have more articles about how Shias do mourning, or how they look to a whole event of Ashura, but we don't see much about the political history of Imam Hussain. But also, I think some of us in English haven't done a good job. We need to do more historical analysis. To writing that also become sensitive to Shia community too. Look, my other talk, which in Farsi in Northwestern, was touching this. Maybe we agree in the basic facts of events of Ashura, but the interpretation so varied, very varied. Some put it in still in historical domain. Some push it out of the historical domain. Some push it in the level like Jesus, which make it Christianization of Imam Hussein's sacrifice. Look, regarding Jesus, it's not important historically who was there, who was the emperor, because the whole idea is that he died on the cross, the Christian view. To wash your sins is a metaphysical thing, it's a historical thing. Doesn't care who happened before that. Those are not big deal. If you change the Ashura and Muharram, push it, you know, I actually, Reynolds was saying, some Muslims come and say, what kind of Jesus is this? How we can follow or imitate Jesus? And then the Christian says, no, I don't want to follow Jesus. I want to worship Jesus. That's the difference. It's not, I'm saying, it's not a role model. Jesus is a God become flesh walking on the earth. It's not a role model. But we can do the same thing for the Imam Hussein movement too. Kulla Yawm and Ashura, Kulla Arz and Karbala means that every day, every moment, we have to uprise for the sake of God, individually or two by two. And it's not necessarily armed struggle. If you have environmental issues, go talk, go do something about it. If there's a worker, do about it. If some racism, go do something about it. Just kneel down for the racism. That's your uprising, okay? That you can, Black Lives Matter, stuff like that, the way you want, the Islamic style. But be sensitive. Don't say, oh, okay, if I do that, I lose my job. Or hijab, that's your jihad. That's enough. That you got. But the point is this, but we can do an Imam Hussein, which is not imitable. I know one of my ancestor, old lady, asking, oh, okay, why you don't do it like Imam Hussein? She would say they are Imams. Exactly for her, the answer was that they're Imams, they're imitable. Because some of their interpretations, the sacrifice in Ashura is for Shafa'a, is for us to cry, to be sorrow, to our sins washed. Look, this is a very fine line. You have to be careful. I'm not saying it is not there. But if you just limit it and the goal for it, and then this will be an even inside the mosque. For me, the 10 day of Ashura is the beginning of training season. I go the whole year to follow Imam Hussein. But if I just make him for the crying and mourning, that is what is important itself. That is goal itself. It's a Christianization of Imam Hussein. This is the Imam Hussein. Do not imitate or follow. This is Imam Hussein. I go for Shafa'ah. So what I do is just inside the mosque. That 10 days I go over there, cry and wash my sins and go up. These are fine. These are things too. I mean, other thing. Look, one of the first books which introduced the whole to academia, the whole event of Ashura, is a book by Mahmoud Ayyub. I really respect this scholar. He's Shia from Lebanon. He's blind. He achieved a lot with his blindness that I cannot achieve 1/10 of it. His book is The Redemptive Suffering in Islam. He compared the idea of suffering Imam Hussein with Jesus. But I think this is the wrong foot to start. Because it pushes exactly to that dimension. Issues not historicity, not social analysis. The other thing he didn't do hadith critical analysis. Mahmoud Ayyub is alive. I really love him. I know him personally. He's so humble. He was Harvard professor. Then he moved to Temple. Don't misunderstood me. I use his book, but I think some of the hadiths, the narration of history of Ashura, are not equal to the other one. Some are not historical. Some of even Iran recited 200 years ago. We know coming from Bulliet to Shia. So we haven't. We should. It's getting better. I'm not saying it's not getting better. People are knowing. We have in US something called Who's Imam Hussein movement, but I think they could do a better job to introduce Imam Hussein. Regarding Tom Holland and Dan Gibson, I think they're biased. They don't want anything good. They're always negative. There are some other issues. Patricia Crone knows, but I think even in her heart, he's very great scholar, great mind. Every time you have a wrestler, you have to respect to the. But look, I wasn't sure he really in her heart. She was the student of with Bernard Lewis, which Bernard Lewis we know wasn't a scholar. He was there to take us all blind alley. He was in service of some, I mean, maybe not officially, but effectively in the service of some other government. And so I know it's hard. I don't know the exactly one-line answer to you, but I just draw a picture that you maybe can add to it too. And maybe what is your opinion? What's your answer to this question? Your question is.
I don't know. I really don't. I think it's a very difficult question. I think that
yes,
there is a risk that maybe Imam Hussain alayhi salam's direct impact was more within the Islamic world than outside, and maybe others saw it as an internal, I don't know, battle that they didn't see as they saw it as a crushing of a small group who they didn't really know who that person was. I don't know, and therefore from an outside in perspective, maybe it wasn't seen as that important, but within Muslim communities and within or the Arab world at the time, it was fundamentally important, but maybe outside it wasn't. I mean, that's just a theory. I have literally no evidence for anything I'm saying, so
Okay.
I can't describe, but I don't know.
Yeah, because it's time, so I add to it. Look, there is another character, Hazrat Zainab. It seems that's now getting more attention, more attraction, because it's simpler. For Imam Hussein, the difficulties of Isma and knowledge of Imam, Ilm it makes it complicated. As I told you, we know the basic facts, but the interpretation of this story are very varied. One group says he doesn't do just to debate. The other group says he rise to get the government. The other group said these are not important thing. The main thing was that he accepted to die in a very hard way of dying with his family. These are said to provide a channel for shafa'a, intercession for the followers of Shia. Look, all these very wide range from all the but because this ilm and all these other stuff, but Hazrat Zainab, because it's not masum, is more to the human, and all these ilm and the ilm knowledge from future goes away, is now more recognized. Look, easier to say, okay, this is a woman, this is such a strong woman, this is such strong standing. It's so hardship he goes. I know the hardest thing for me, she did the Laylatul Tahajjud, Salatul Layl, during the midnight. It's so hard to do it. Believe me, when you're upset, you're tired, you just want that depressed, you want just to sleep, and you don't know what to do. I mean, I don't know, you guys maybe that she has the strength of all that all those sitting, doing 16, the doubling the rak'ah and doing the salat al-tahajjud. It's so strong. Believe me, if you try to do this, and then the way she talks shows strongly all these days of tiredness and sorrow. Usually we go to ourselves, especially women are. Or, I mean, all of us, and then she's strong. Look, there is a book. Tahira Qutbuddin is a scholar of Ismaili. She's Ismaili scholar of University of Chicago, but she's the leading scholar of Arabic khutbah. She's muhajjab. She's very. So it doesn't have here Ismaili or Shia Ismaili. She has fantastic job on commentary on khutbah of Hazrat Zainab. I also once give a talk on it. If you can search on it, she has articles about Ali. Look, so and Kulthum also, the sister, so powerful. I mean, even the interpretation, we have heard it, but her interpretation is new. I mean, it could be 1 hour. So this example of Hazrat Zainab is spreading out more. I think we need to do it about Hussein. One way, look, if we make it meat, make it very, goes to the meat, becomes meat of a culture. But if we make it a person in history, maybe there is those dimensions. I'm not saying there are not those dimensions of miraculous dimension, but if we go to the person of history and try to analyze it, maybe could be somebody else other cultures can relate and imitate. And which is there is a sacrifice, there is every standing. Nowadays we have people standing for the belief no matter what, and he stood, he said, look, a person such as me would not do bay'ah with Yazid. All they want him to do bay'ah, do it. He want to force it to do, I'm not doing. This is the line, this is the red line. No matter what said, I'm not doing. I see, that's our last thing. Look, he didn't come necessarily from Medina to do the uprising. That's maybe the wrong thing. But he come out of the Medina. He said, at least I know. Qiyaman lillah furada. I am not going to do bay'ah with this guy. That's I can do. I have control myself. When he came to Mecca, when Abdullah Zubayr also came, people in Kufa heard Imam Hussein hasn't bay'ah. Start to write letter. Now it's instead of masna qiyamul lillah masna furada, now become qiyamul lillah masna. They send letter, they invited him. Now it is the second stage, collective uprising. Okay, then they betrayed him. Okay, you betrayed me, I stand my foot. I think it's good. Your community have lots of experience. We have to find a way to present it to the people. Maybe scholars are biased. It's not the case. You see, Patricia Crone is not only to Imam Hussein. The whole negativity against the Prophet Muhammad. Even she's kind of smirk on her. In a scholarly environment, after the Behnam Sadiqi's work on the San'a palimpsest, she start to backtrack. Oh, okay, maybe Quran was collected earlier, maybe there was a prophet. But when you go to Tom Holland, she smiles, she's silent. She says, I mean, I know. She said, when we don't know anything about Prophet Muhammad. She said, we know less than Jesus, because they are jealous. Look, Jesus, we have a couple of sentences at most, but the Prophet Muhammad history, we know day and hour. They want to put doubt in it. They want to bring question in it. They want to show, okay, the text and history is not there because it's relatable. So these are all we have to see. But I'm sorry, because your question now is more kind of sensitive than main talk, so I maybe answer it more because it's an important question, and then I'm not sure how much answer I have for it.
Thank you very much. There has been one question which has been sent, but we have run out of time. I'll email you at least, and maybe if you have a chance, that would be really fantastic if you could answer. So thank you very much for your talk and for the Q&A, and you know, it was a great honor and privilege to have you virtually at our center, and maybe when you come to London in the future at any point, it would be great for you to come and visit us, inshallah.
Thank you. I enjoyed being introduced to you guys at Shia International Community in Middlesex. I really like to come to England one time. I just passed when I was a child as a flight, 3 days transit many years ago. So I really want to see London and England, hopefully one day. So inshallah, pray.
Thank you very much. And just a couple of announcements before we close. Next week we have Femi Oluwole, who'll be speaking about Brexit, what happens now in our current environment. The week after we have, of course, Arain, Sheikh Jafar Ladik, who'll be speaking on that. And the week after we have Amna Jatoy, she's speaking about In the Court of People, Pakistan's election. The week after we have Imam Hussain alayhi salam's wafat and the Prophet's wafat with Sayyid Fadl Milani, and the week after we have about discussions on COVID, some legal implications by the barrister Zahra Rikabi. So thank you very much for everyone for joining. You can obviously find out more about our programs on SICM.org.uk. Thank you for listening, and we'll end with Salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.